Awesome. So Susie won Best Dramatic Feature at Bushwick Film Festival, and you guys won Best Director too, right? At Best Directors at in LA. Oh, I'm sorry. I
No,
always
no,
thought that
it
over.
was best ensemble
Oh, Best
cast
Ensemble. Well, that's awesome.
in DTLA and Bushwick best narrative feature. Yeah,
That's
thank
amazing. That's
you.
amazing. Congratulations. That's so awesome. I'm sure that was a very
Yeah.
special experience, right? I'm sure Eric was very excited too, and
Yeah,
Darla.
it was really great. Met a lot of really amazing people and got to kind of like the heart of both festivals. It felt like by interacting with people so closely and um, followed like the same filmmakers kind of from film to film.
Hmm.
I feel like we've all kind of done similar things in the past and setting up or attempting to some kind of network out of that and
Cool.
um, you know,
I'm so happy for
seeing
you.
what sticks.
Yeah, I
Very,
mean,
very cool. Big
very cool.
congratulations
Yeah,
for
big
sure.
congrats. And I'm sure it's just the beginning of great things to come from our Susie Moon. So
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Thank
Um,
you.
so yeah, let's get to our convo. We're going to be talking about Whistle and I'll Come to You. So this was a 1968 BBC television short film. It was directed by Jonathan Miller and it was based on M.R. James's his ghost story, Oh Whistle and I'll Come to You, My Lad. Um, so this inspired a yearly anthology film series called Ghost Stories for Christmas. And in 2010, they made another adaptation. So we'll be doing kind of a compare and contrast between the 1968 film and the 2010 film. Um, yeah, so Susie, I mean, you introduced this to us, and thank you for doing so. I love the OG film. Can you maybe give us a little bit of, I guess, insight? How did you come across these stories? And you mentioned like Brits, they like to share ghost stories during Christmas, which is not really, I guess, not really a tradition here, right? In the States. Like, could you maybe give us a little bit of insight?
Yeah, through meeting and getting married to my husband, who's a Brit, and he eventually getting to Christmas traditions and sharing that this is a very normal part of a British Christmas. Everybody's got this shared experience of the ghost story. Doesn't have to have a Christmas theme. In fact, it mostly doesn't, I guess. It's like kind of the point. And it's any ghost story, I guess, that can be told or seen now. Um, and I guess maybe John was, if anything, sort of interested, like, why do you guys not have this? Because it seems like kind of in a lot of America, it can be associated with dark weather or the time change and all that.
Mm.
Is there no room for this? And so I became interested. So that was the first movie that he showed to me to share this as like a custom, and we've kept it kind of ever since.
Mm. Cool. Yeah. Um, yeah, let's talk about the 1968 version first. Um,
I would like to hear thoughts,
yeah, yeah,
and I can like hang back for a minute.
sure. Do you guys remember the opening shot? Dom, do you remember the opening shot?
Opening shot of the 68 version. I don't think I do. I
Hmm.
watched that one first and the more recent one afterwards. It was a
Okay.
little while ago.
I'll share it with you. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so that's the opening
Mhm.
shot. Um, I thought it was a strong opening shot. I would have rather not liked the narration. You guys remember?
Yeah, it's kind of like frames it in like a Rod
Yeah,
Serling or
it
like
talks about,
Hitchcock. Yeah.
yeah, that M.R. James and his writing, and um, it would have been so
I
wonderful if we just had like a this shot, just like hearing the water, right, the beach. and you're just kind of walking up the beach. I think that would have been so powerful.
I mean, I think we'll get into that, but I actually liked that bit of information that we get during that is that he's an academic and that he was a little bit sort of like curmudgeonly. I don't remember the exact phrasing that they used, but I thought like for me that informed a lot of like the way I was viewing the entire philosophy of that.
uh,
So, but yeah, we'll get into that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, just like the beach and the ocean in general, I suppose. Like it evokes a lot of really strong emotions, right? Like, this idea of there's a lot of research that says the reason we like ocean sounds and the reason we like white noise sounds is because it reminds us of being in our mother's womb, right? So yeah, I mean there are a lot of like interesting images that kind of popped up in my head when I first saw this image and heard kind of the beach and um yeah, the ocean's also kind of terrifying in that there's that saying, you know the ocean giveth and the ocean taketh away, right? Like we all come from the ocean. And yeah, it was just a like an eerie sort of eerie sounds and an eerie image to start the film. So I thought it was pretty powerful. um yeah, any thoughts in general about some of the opening scenes, Tom?
I really liked them, but it felt to me like I think I liked it almost out of like in a weird way like a nostalgia for like experimental student films almost. Like obviously it's not a student film, but it was
Hmm.
low budget and it wasn't anything that you couldn't do without a budget, right? So it was like just seeing something in full frame, not widescreen, and being done like it's just shots of the of a character rambling around and like it and I mean that in a good way, right? Like it
Hmm.
felt very experimental to me and very like much more interesting than it could have been. Like it felt like the shots were, I don't know, they made me pay attention. And same thing with the acting, like that. I don't know how you felt, but like that actor, and especially in the 1968 one, like everything that he did, his mannerisms, like the gusto with which he eats every single thing, like I paid so much attention to
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. I think that was, I don't know, for me that was pretty intentional.
Yeah.
Um, like he is sort of a goofball the way he eats. He just kind of goes about his day, and all of like the really mundane things, like the maids folding the bed and him taking a bath and him just sitting and eating, and I think it really does set up um because it's really such a calm, like level sort of tone in the beginning. It really does set up for the later kind of horror that's to come. Um, so I thought it was really effective, actually. Like, there's no music at all. There's no music at all, actually, in the entire film. Um, yeah, I just thought it was a really nice setup to what's to come later. And I think it trusts the audience. Um, so you already know. I mean, from that intro and from obviously from the collection of what these stories are. They're supposed to be ghost stories, so I'm sure the audience is aware of what they're watching. So I think it really does trust the audience. There are no like music cues or something like that to really,
The
yeah.
the other thing that struck me pretty immediately was because just when we were setting up to do this, it was like, oh, there's a 1968 version and a 2010 version, right? So that idea of the year 1968 stuck in my head really well. And I think a combination of it being television as opposed to film and it being a different culture made me immediately realize old and like different 1968 uh Britain feels, because like we did The Exorcist, right, which was only 1971.
Mm,
And to me, like everything about the inn that he's staying in, the way they dress, everything felt like if you had showed me some stills from this and I had to guess, I would have thought it was a film from like the 40s. You know what I mean? Like 1968 is not that long ago compared to
Yeah.
comparable things. So like
Mm,
that's interesting to think about. Like it's yes, it's the time difference, but I think it's also the cultural difference. Like some of the stuff and like the manners of it all made it feel to me a lot older than it actually was, and
mm,
all to the good. Like it made it feel that much more sort of haunting and interesting. But like 1968, like if you look at contemporary stuff in 1968, it doesn't look like this. Like this looks like this because that's what this is.
yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. Um, any thoughts, Susie? Just been kind of sitting back, watching us blab
Yeah,
away.
I'm into it and absorbing, I guess, like because I've had a lot of like cold reception to this.
Cold reception, you said?
Yeah, when I've suggested it to people
Mm,
and stuff, and it's just been like either it's been like, yeah, it was interesting, or to no, I never ended up watching it, to like, oh, yeah, it was not very enjoyable. And I was like, oh, what a bummer, because I love this.
yeah, it's
But
really wonderful. I think it's really
uh
wonderful. Like, because the professor, he's Michael Hordern, right?
mhm,
Right. The actor.
yeah,
He's so terrific. Like he's again, like Don mentioned, there's his mannerisms and
so
um
natural.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so believable. So
Yeah.
absolutely believable. Because I feel like I know people like that. And he is such an intellectual, but at the same time, he's very ignorant and he just doesn't want to look outside like the scope of his little what he knows, right?
Yeah.
So um she's such an interesting character to me. And then when something that he can't really fathom happens, right? He can't really doesn't really know how to process it. Um
Yeah.
yeah, that was spooky for me to like witness and watch.
Yeah, that actually directly ties into what I like. So the starting with like the whole narration about him being this academic and being kind of ornery, like to me, like that the thing that I took out of it the most was sort of like well, first of all, like everything he's muttering to himself, like I felt like that was really realistic. Like I've seen people do that in life and it felt really realistic and it could have been much worse. And I've seen people act that poorly. But also he's this academic, so his intellect is what he's priding himself on, right? He's made a life of intellect, but everything like he's not actually like to your point, he's kind of ignorant. He's not actually open-minded. He's just like when they're sitting, he's eating everything that he can actually physically directly tangibly deal with, he gets that and he studies that, but he can't go beyond that, right? That's why like the food and everything is so like physical and he's so into those like banal things. But then when the guy asks him sort of an interesting, I thought, question about ghosts, he uses this like academic jargon to not answer the question at all in a way that's like really unsatisfying. Like if it was like a character who we wanted to be like totally on board with, he would give you like this like really satisfying, really like good answer, but instead he uses his intellect to get around answering the question and doesn't actually say anything at all,
Yeah.
is my interpretation of it. And then when he's ultimately like you said, when he's ultimately faced with something that he can't comprehend, it's just that he can't comprehend it. He's unable to deal with it. So it's like he's to me like a lot of it read as sort of like this person hiding behind academia and his intellect and but like not actually having the true spirit of someone who's open-minded and actually intellectual, um,
Yeah.
which I
Um,
thought was really cool. But I also don't know if that was like just me, like my interpretation of it. So
I
yeah.
get that read from him as a character too. He's funny, doddering, he's blameless ultimately. And yeah, I go between feeling in some weird way like a superiority over this man, just because I'm like, huh, well, guy, but yeah, and then to feeling deep sort of worry that he's going to well, for at first I'm afraid that he's going to meet that specter or that emanation, or well, let's just call it the ghost, on the shore. And then I get worried about how he's going to be when he does confront it. I'm not worried for like his very life. It's not, it's a, you know what I mean? I'm actually like worried for what the face of his mortal fear looks like, more than like his death in the movie. Just, I don't know if I'm saying that weird, but like I'm not prepared to go that with him, but you're taking me there anyway. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
it's like, oh my God, I am seeing it. And yes, I'm there with you, you know, and it's with the thumb in the mouth, it's all just very psychologically close to
Mm.
him. And I find that like existentially weird, you know? But I might be taking it like to a whole separate place from you guys. So you tell me.
No, that makes a lot of sense to me. There is this sort of innocence to him, no? Like there is this
Yeah, love it.
I
Yeah.
think, well, I think it's like not really innocence for me, but naivete, but again in a kind of that in a bad way, because I do kind of blame him a little bit. Like Susie says, he's blameless, but like for me, I do blame him because if he wasn't, like, he uses his intellect to be arrogant and hide behind it. To me, like that's my interpretation. Like in that whole conversation, they
something
quote
hurt him.
Shakespeare. They quote Shakespeare, right? And it's just like there's more, you know, than can be dreamed up in your philosophy. And then he keeps going back, and he's
He's
like,
so proud of that line.
No, well,
Yeah.
he reverses it, and he's scoffing at it, right? Like, haha, like he refuses to believe that there's anything that he couldn't understand outside of his philosophy, right? Like he thinks,
Yeah.
no, you're wrong. Philosophy is greater than everything that could be understood. And really, it's like if he would be open-minded enough to be like, hey, there's something on the beach like following me after I blew this whistle, or hey, there's something in that bed. Like instead he just dismisses it like, oh, phenomenon again. He uses this
Oh, right.
jargon,
Yeah.
right? Like they tell him, hey, since you left your room, your bed's been turned down and only people who have the keys haven't been in there. And he's like, phenomenon. It's like, hey, if you investigate that and actually like don't use your arrogance to dismiss it, maybe you
Mm.
can save yourself. But instead you're gonna just be so sure of yourself and so sure that you understand everything that you're going to ultimately meet your demise. Like that was how I felt about it, at least, which I love. Like I kind of love that, like knocking these intellectual people off of their pedestal, because it's just like, the for me the real intellect is Socrates, right? Like I know nothing. Like really like smart people step back and they're like, okay, I have a lot to learn always. I'm always curious. I know nothing. And this is this guy who's this expert and he knows everything. And it's just
Mm.
like, oh, that's gonna screw you, basically.
Yeah, that's a great point. Susie, something on your mind?
Um, yeah, you were saying about phenomenon. First of all, that extended phenomenon, like he says like two or three additional ones more than I wanted to hear. You know what I mean? And that like, I don't know, it's just some people just know it in like their core what to do. And I feel like Michael Hordern just fell off the truck like that. He's so good.
Absolutely. I mean, how captivating it when he's cleaning out a whistle, and I was like captivated. Like
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
I'm
puts
like,
yeah,
he puts his books on the desk. Like it's like
yep.
a
And the
like a
sound of
master
the,
class. The
the
what?
little tap, 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 the sound of the tap,
yeah.
Yeah,
He's
everything.
like, oh, he's looking at it. He's like,
it's like
he's
a
like,
it's
it's
like a
such a
master class in actor's business, right? It's like
yeah.
do this, do that, and like everything that he does like shows you his character, and it's like you want to watch him do it. Like I was like, why am I so enthralled in everything? The way he cut his pear or apple or whatever that was, I
Oh
was
my
just
God,
like,
yeah.
I was like so into everything this guy did. I don't even know what he was eating for breakfast out of that bowl, but
Right.
I
Like
was like
haddock or
watching.
something. It
Yeah,
says like haddock.
Yeah.
and that's the other thing too. He enjoyed it so much too. Like it's so
Mm,
pleasurable to watch someone enjoy something. It's like in Twin Peaks when the guy's just like, "Oh, damn fine cup of coffee." Like it reminded me of that. Like it's kind of endearing just to watch someone enjoy things, and all this guy does is enjoy things really
yeah.
until things go crazy. But like it was really like I almost don't understand why it was so captivating, but it definitely was for me. Like everything that he
Mm.
did.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Well, the phenomenon scene. Oh, that sheet scene, that's right. It was because it reminded me that I did not reread the entire story, but I did get to the part where um that scene is described, and in the short story there is in fact a visible movement of what looks like a sheet sort of being moved around, and I think the his companion or whomever is next to him also sees the thing, and so it becomes like, oh, somebody's clearly up there. That's fine. Let's go and investigate, you know? And then that's I wonder if like as a director I would not have included that little slice just to kind of like bump up the kind of like the screws are being turned on Parkin, you know what I mean? Like, no, we saw it too. You're not sort of going crazy. You might be in danger, you know, is like where we can be at with him at this stage. But I would like that as a scene. I don't
Really?
know. Thoughts?
So you will like something like someone else kind of seeing that, noticing that. You
Yeah,
will like
like
that.
so before that scene that Dom was talking about where he's like, well, no, I didn't sleep there, and you have a key and I have a key. Phenomenon, you know. Right before then, in the story as written, what happens is Parkin and companions
Right.
stop at the
I
bottom and
remember.
see.
Yeah. And you would have
So
liked that.
I kind of do.
Yeah.
Is that like hammer over the head?
For me, maybe a little bit. I just
Okay.
like how like isolated Perkins is. Like I like how
Yeah, I definitely think it's
alone he is. Yeah,
creepier
I
having him
think it's
alone.
much creepier. Yeah.
It's
Okay.
also like for me, like it has to be plausible that he could still deny something. So like the way it is in the first TV thing, it is plausible that like, well, maybe one of these other people has a key and they ruffled the bed or maybe forgot.
Right.
But two people seeing something together, like in general with horror, as long as two people are sharing an experience, it's so much less
Yeah.
frightening.
Yeah, right. You have
Being
to.
alone is, yeah, there's something very creepy about that. Especially
Yeah.
him, because he is a very, like Dom said, he is just chipper kind of, he loves enjoying everything. So when he's alone, like, and he's with his own
Yeah.
thoughts, I think that's very, very creepy.
They also, I think they earned it
Yeah.
because like from the second sequence, or maybe it's even the first, like right after the sequence the shot you showed, they showed the two, I guess, maids making up the second bed, and like they go
Mm,
to great lengths to frame the space so that you know like there's two rooms in this bed, and also there are multiple shots, unless I'm misremembering, of that empty bed throughout
Yeah.
it. So it's like you know something's coming there. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think I liked the way it was more than if there was this, because what would be the benefit, I guess, of having another person share that experience with him? Like, I guess you could further, if he then still denied it, then that would even more show that he's like refusing to believe what he doesn't want to believe. But I feel like we got that effectively without that. So
I guess I don't need that room to deny, maybe.
Hmm.
I don't know. Hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Dom.
I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
for me, it kind of comes back to the old like the ghost story uh comic bit, right? Where I don't know if it was Eddie Murphy, but it's kind of just like there's always that moment when you're writing or making a story where these things start happening and you have to sort of explain or address why the hell aren't people just leaving and get the hell out of there, you know?
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like one, if you do something that's too crazy that it would be unbelievable, people wouldn't immediately leave, then that's not good. But also like it goes to his character that whatever he sees, he's not really believing, and that's the reason he's not getting out of there.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Hmm.
So the scene where he does blow the whistle for the first time, and it's kind of fades, and you see the figure on the beach. Um, isn't that I thought that was so effective. It was so I don't know, the sounds that are used, you can hear like the ocean, and then you can hear
Love
the
it. Yeah.
clanking, and then it's probably not the first time, but you hear this like guttural, like weird, like spooky
Right.
voice thing. Like it's amazing how
Yeah.
like, you know, $1.25 blanket and like some really primitive like film with some primitive, you know, sound equipment, you can generate something like that, right? Um, it was
So
so
good.
spooky. It was so well done. Yeah.
No, that's yeah, that was one of my big takeaways, honestly, right? It's like that literally the cheesiest effect that like a ghost of a sheet, like the
Yeah,
cheesiest effect you could think of is more effective than literal CGI effects of black shadowy figures and shapes that probably
absolutely.
cost tens of thousands of dollars in films
What do you
or did
attribute that to, Dom? Like how do you think why do you think that was so well
I
conceived
just
and so
think
well conveyed?
there's I just think there's something to physical actual things in front of a camera that like even the best CGI that could look technically quote unquote better than that is not like there's something in our brains that is not scared by it. I don't know what it is, but there's
Mhm.
this uncanny thing that and like honestly I ended that movie thinking like because I know we've been talking about like shooting some stuff in the new year and making it low budget. And I was thinking like this is actually a gold mine for aspiring filmmakers who want to do low budget stuff
Yeah,
because you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
no,
You can just watch stuff from like the 50s and 60s and it's like it's in camera tricks. It's like if they did it then, you can do it now for no money.
Yeah.
And I think we would do well to think that way rather than like thinking of something that's effects heavy and thinking like, okay, what's the low budget version of doing that? It's like, let's just like look at some of this stuff and atmosphere and mood like can be done in camera with no effects and like be really effective.
Yeah.
yeah. Any thoughts about that scene, Susie?
Um, what just the use of the sheet?
Yeah, and just his expression too. Like Horton, if you remember, he's maybe I can find it for you.
Yeah.
Just
I I
him wrinkling his brow. It was just so perfect.
I think those were actually though the sequence that sequence was probably the one that did make me feel the most like student film experimental
Oh
again in a
yeah.
good way because
Mhm.
of like the sort of cutting and the simplicity of it and like
Yeah.
there is a bad version of that that we've all seen but it
Yeah.
works so well in this because again
Yeah.
because I think it's earned because the acting is good you know but I
Mhm.
mean there is a version of that that is uh not as good obviously.
He
Yeah.
looks so vulnerable there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. No, I was thinking of the
What
sheet
was it?
on the beach when he's running and they're like the cutting is super
Oh, yeah,
quick.
yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Um
I think that's the second time it appears.
It's sort of like it at a distance, it looks like a just a figure that's enshrouded.
Or the third time,
Then
right?
as it comes closer, you sort of make out that it might could be just caught up in the wind, you know?
Yeah.
But the fact is, it being tied to that whistle means that something's coming for him. And so we're worried for this man.
Yeah.
Um, and we don't know because you have no idea. There's no shape to it.
You know,
No
that's a
way to
great point
fight it.
too.
You don't know
Yeah.
even what to call it.
The mystery of that is what was truly frightening to me. Like I don't know what this is. Like I don't know what this is. Like that was very,
Yeah.
very, yeah, the
it's a
mystery of it.
little bit reminiscent or actually predates obviously, but like it has fact like both The Ring or even It Follows where it's just like uh you know in The Ring it's these people watch this videotape which is a pretty innocent thing to do and in It Follows I think it's just they've had sex or something right and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's like these characters do this
You
one
know
thing
they're coming out with a They Follow?
oh really no I didn't know
Yes.
that's I mean it's yeah I'll see it but I mean
What? Yeah, looking
like
forward.
but like my point is like they do some act and then that act triggers something that is not at all like a proper or fair or
Right.
just you know
Mm,
ramification of
Outcome.
that act
Yeah.
this dude just finds a whistle I mean it is kind of on a grave so that's I guess a little bit more than purely innocent potentially not really but he blows his whistle and all of a sudden he's basically locked his own fate just because he blew a whistle.
Could have
so
been any of us. Is like that's the takeaway message there.
which is like the basis of so much horror, right? Could happen to
Yeah,
anybody.
Yeah, just the simplicity of it, though.
yeah,
It's very elegant. Like it's very elegantly told.
yeah.
Um,
I don't know what you guys thought of that final scene with the ghost revealing itself, because it isn't a figment of his imagination. It is in actuality a ghost. Um, some thoughts.
Yeah, again, for me, it was relatively straightforward in this one, which was just like his mind literally can't reconcile this. So it's just there's nowhere to go for there. Like he's a
mm.
man of his mind and he's seeing something that he doesn't believe in and doesn't want to believe in and can't understand. And so that's the end for him, right? It's like there is nothing beyond what he, and it's not, again, it's not actual intellect, it's just what he wants to believe. He's unable or unwilling
Mm.
to believe something outside of what he currently believes. And so like in this case, it's literally being confronted with that he should believe something that he doesn't believe. That's the end. He can't overcome that.
The movie that I was talking to you about, Susie, earlier, I Am the Pretty Thing That
Mm.
lives in this house. That has to be based on this. Now that I'm really thinking about it, like there,
What?
yeah, it has to be. Like you should watch it. Watch it. It has to be.
Okay.
I'm sure like Perkins watched this film, and I'm almost sure that it's
Amazing. Okay.
yeah, check it out. Yeah, you should check it out too, Dom. Like it's one of my favorite horror films in the last, yeah, I probably in the last long time. It's been a long time since I've watched an interesting horror film. That's kind of a slow burn and doesn't
Mhm.
do too much. Yeah, you guys should check it out. It really does. Now that we're like talking about it, like yeah, I was like, yeah, oh wow, you can draw so many like connections.
Okay.
So check it out. I thought it was horrifying. Like I don't know, there's something just about the atmosphere and again those sounds that like it's such a primitive sort of like again
Mhm.
like such a primitive sound that that ghost is making. It was shocking a little bit. Yeah,
Mhm.
like I wasn't expecting it to go that hard. um, yeah, it was scary. It was like truly, like one of my favorite films is the 1951 Scrooge with Alastair Sim, and it was directed by
Okay.
Brian Desmond Hurst. Um, it's my favorite Scrooge. It's my favorite Christmas Carol.
Mhm.
And there's a scene in that movie where it's just a very simple effect where they're like these homeless people. So Marley shows Scrooge like, oh, this is what's going to happen to you if you don't listen to me and you don't follow these ghosts. And he opens the door, the door open. He swings the door open. Outside, you see this homeless um, woman and like these little it's just like an overlay. It's like what like it's superimposed, and these people are just throwing money at this homeless girl, but they're ghosts, so she can't, she doesn't see it, but Scrooge sees that like these ghosts are throwing money at her. As a kid, I thought that was so spooky. There's something like so creepy about that. I was like scared out of my mind in seventh grade when I saw that. And again, it's just such a simple trick. It's like, such a simple idea, but it kind of really reminded me of like some of the techniques used here. Um, yeah,
It can be effective.
yeah, absolutely. Um,
I don't know like what the thinking is nowadays. Is it mostly like relatively inexpensive to get somebody to do the visual effects work on your movie rather than you trying to do it in practical effects?
I think it's
I
just a
don't know.
trend, right, Tom? Like, what would you say? Like, it's just that's what people like to do. And that's how people like to tell stories these days. Like
I
it's
mean,
just
I think it totally depends. I think it's like it depends on budget, depends on a whole bunch of things. Usually it's honestly a mix. Like they always say like the best visual like digital effects are usually actually the ones that are complementing practical effects that you don't really notice. As I think most
Yeah.
filmmakers at least are still against like creating these things in whole cloth, like creating figures and things like that completely CGI, but also like with virtual production coming and like everybody's shooting things in a volume where the entire setting is created on screens that you're shooting like um it's only going to become more and more relevant. I think it's going to get better and better. I mean, honestly, it's technology, right? So like even with the technology that's existed, there's always going to be films that employ it and don't. I mean, I've always been more of a practical effects type person. Um, just because I think even if something looks really good today, it's going to look dated in 10 years. Whereas there are some films like this would be a good example that are, 50, 60 years old that are not dated and still hold up because they're not using any type of like computer generated imagery. Um,
oh, yeah,
but
great point.
I think everybody's doing all of the above, and it's always a question of budget and what's possible and all these other things.
Yeah. Let's move on to the because we're going to stay here forever. Let's move on to the 2010 film.
Mhm.
So this was directed by Andy Diamani, and it was made in 2010. Do you guys remember the opening shot for this?
I don't.
Yeah, it's like a blurry image of a clock. He's the actor Michael Hurd, I
Oh,
believe. He's just staring at the clock.
Is it like
okay.
the rotating clock with the
Yeah,
clock? Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
which makes sense. All right, the film is
Mm.
it's a much more narrow film, I feel like, right? Like you know, it's about like lost memories, dementia. It's
Hmm.
the setup is pretty straightforward. Like with the, what do you
I
guys
don't know.
think about the setup?
I'll be interested to hear what you guys say, honestly, because yeah, I think that whereas the first film was sort of like experimental and interesting in lots of ways, and I really enjoyed it. The second one, I felt like was actually going for a more specific thing, but I understood it less. So I'm kind of like interested to hear what you all have to say. Um, yeah.
Susie, any thoughts first, just on again like the setup and just the
Um,
differences just straight off the bat?
I talked about it with John. We watched it together.
Oh yeah.
We watched it together the first time and this time. And he said something interesting. He was like, I'm not sure that it needs the association with the original movie. It's sort of like it's different enough that it's like kind of its own thing,
Yeah.
Like um and I tend to agree. Yeah. I think I also would have it would have kind of unburdened like I would have just been able to watch it as a thing.
Mm.
Whereas I had expectations because I'm coming at this with baggage of expectation.
Right. Right.
That said, it was just not scary. Also,
That's so crazy, right? Like how
yeah,
the tech is so much more advanced, and
yeah,
it just doesn't matter. Like it's just good storytelling. It's good storytelling, and I was not scared. Like even when like that, when the wife was crawling, I'm still here. The very
hmm
like sort of cliche Japanese horror thing that they do.
hmm
I just wasn't. I was like, okay, like this is not. Yeah, this is not scary. I don't know. I don't know.
yeah,
Didn't really work for me. I think like the way it was set up too, um, it didn't really make a lot of sense. Like, seeing the wife in the hospital, like it just didn't make sense. Like they were all lined up, and just like the women were just facing
hmm
each other and they're all in white gowns. I mean, that's not
yeah.
realistic at
That
all.
actually stood out to me this time.
Yeah. Like why are
Um,
they sitting like that? And why,
they're so stylized, and the stylized way that the nurse addresses, well, everyone, I suppose, is it was a conscious choice, I feel.
yeah,
And
very
that
conscious.
said, does that say something about, is this like a way station of the soul, as my husband put it? Is that how we're supposed to understand this? Like,
I
if that's
suppose.
the case, I don't mind a little bit more of like a hit at home then. Give it to me. I don't know
Yeah,
why we're in this. Yeah.
it was strange, and you could tell that the director or writer, they're working very hard to make sure that you knew this was supposed to be creepy, right? With all the sound cues and the music,
Oh, I
right?
know.
Like whereas the first one again doesn't have any music. There's no
No.
non-diegetic music in the first one. The only like actual diegetic music in the first one is when the professor blows on the actual flute on the whistle. But
Yes.
there's no other music, and that's even creepier because again, like
Yeah.
it creates this again this mystery. Whereas the second film, there was no mystery at all. You knew that it was going to be about the wife. You knew that she was going to be about somehow connected to the dementia and the memory loss. Like you
Yeah. Yeah.
already knew it, so there was no suspense or surprise
Yeah.
when it actually does happen, which was the big kind of problem for me.
Yeah. But did you? I mean, I kind of like what Susie said, like just hammer it home then, because I felt like yeah. So maybe like there's ways I could tie it all together, but
Hmm.
it's not clear enough that I feel strongly that I'm right in any way, or not even like that it has to be right or wrong. That like it's even compelling if it is. Like if I draw my own narrative from what happened, it's still not that interesting. And I feel like they were trying to go for something specific, but like so like if you're saying like okay this wife, maybe let's say that room is that hospital sanitarium is kind of like almost like a purgatory because she's
Uh-huh.
not right, like then so but then and then at the very end she's disappeared, right? So then what's the message there, like that because her bond with her husband is so strong her husband needs to die in order for her to move on past purgatory? Like what's like what
Hmm.
like she doesn't want him to live without her, like what are we trying to say here? I don't even care if I agree with what you're trying to say, I just want to know what you're trying to
What
say.
it is.
Like because yeah, what's the point? Like that's what I wanted to hear. I was hoping like one of you had like a strong opinion
It
about
was
what the point is of
confusing. I was very
yeah,
confused.
I was very confused. I think also a lot of like just craft wise a lot of it went on too long. Like to your point about it not being scary, like there's stuff we've seen 100 times, like somebody, a light on the other end of a door and that door banging. That could be scary, right? But there's a reason that in most other effective horror movies it bangs like 2 or 3 times. This thing, it's like it felt to me like 60 seconds of a door banging really, really hard. Like it was a
Yeah.
lot. Um, and then it happens a second time before she actually comes
Well, so
underneath
do
it.
you think that that knocking was in fact his wife's spirit trying to get at him? Is that what
Well,
we're?
Well, it is at at the end, right? At the end, the
Yeah,
knocking
yeah.
occurs, and then she
So it
comes
was
under the
her
door.
spirit knocking, and he should have just opened the door all this time, kind
Well, should
of.
he have, or would she have just killed him earlier? I don't
But
know.
why is
Like,
she so scary though?
Yeah,
right? That's
Well, I don't
exactly.
know. Like, why is he
right,
trying to scare
right. Like, does
scare
she
her
feel
poor
abandoned by
husband?
him? Because like they set it up to seem like like he actually does love her, and he does a pretty like. I don't think it seems like he's doing a selfish thing to take a few days,
No,
right?
of
Like,
course
and he's
not.
doing it going back to a place that they went together. But yeah, like
Yeah.
to your point, Susie, I think like if it wasn't married to the original, I think I probably would have appreciated it more because why did they shoehorn it in, right? It's called Whistle and I'll Come for You, right?
Yeah.
There's no whistle, it's a ring in this one.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
they try to push that in, but like he whispers it to her as if it's kind of like an inside joke, but like it ends in lad and she's a woman, so it doesn't really fit. Like it felt very shoehorned. Like whistle and I'll come for you, lad. He even says the
Mm.
lad part. Like you could have at least left the lad part out because you wouldn't call your wife lad. So
No.
it was almost like drawing like hanging a lantern on the fact that it didn't quite fit. I was just like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
Oh
Well,
dear.
I guess my bigger question is like, so why do you think do you think like the filmmaker saw it as like an opportunity to do what? Like to improve on the original or like to tell their own story or like to make it more modern or I don't
I think they were going for poignancy.
like okay. Yeah.
They were
Okay.
like, no, we really like this angle, but we want that plus like 35% more poignancy.
35. Someone who was like taking, jotting
Mhm.
notes, and you're probably right. I don't know. Yeah. You
I
have to
mean,
make
How
this.
do you explain it? How? Like, why would you do this?
Yeah.
the creepiest thing for me was the bust in the window. And they actually do draw attention to that, right? He like puts it
Oh,
away
yeah.
and he's like, whoever thought this would be like a good piece of decoration,
Yeah.
essentially.
I'd never been in that room at night for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It would be interesting if I hadn't seen the other one before. I think I would like it better, but I still think I would feel like it's a little bit unclear. There's things that are open-ended, which are good, and there are things that are just unclear, which are not good. And I don't
Mm.
think there's enough clarity in there to make it really like feel satisfying to me at least.
Yeah, I just don't think there's a lot of, again, I said this before, but I just don't think there's a lot of trust in the audience, like to just relax and just kind of figure things out. I don't know.
But they shouldn't trust me because I didn't figure it out.
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm saying. Like they should give me a little bit more and then trust me. Like you're always trying to find that line and not have the audience be ahead of you. But like you also don't want the audience to feel like the filmmakers don't really know what they're going for. And like I felt more
That's
like
exactly
that.
what I thought. That's exactly what I thought. I thought the filmmakers didn't know what they were going for. Exactly.
But I think they
They weren't
did. I
very
think they
sure.
just didn't do a good job of getting it across. Because I don't really know any filmmaker who like goes into production that big and doesn't at least have their own take on it. Like I believe
Mm.
they had their own take on it. I just think they didn't give enough of their take like in a clear way to make it effective.
Yeah, this might have been a problem on the page.
Yeah, sure. Like, yeah, I have a theory about like opening shots. Like I feel like if the filmmaker doesn't really have a clear idea of what they want to do, whether it's on the page or whether like it's his vision, like you can't possibly have a bold opening shot. Um,
Oh, interesting.
I don't think
Okay.
this film has a bold opening shot. It's a blurry image, and you guys don't even remember what it was.
No, you're
Um,
right. I didn't. And I had just seen it. Well, not just, but I saw it last week.
Whereas the other film, the 1968 film,
Yeah,
like that is memorable. Like the big sun and the glaring sun and the
yeah,
beach and the sounds and him walking up the beach. It's a bold shot. And
yeah.
I think all great films have bold opening images. Um, and all films that aren't very good, don't have very good opening images. Right. So opening images are like one of the most, obviously one of the most
More so than
important things.
closing ones.
Both, yeah. Opening, that's all you need to watch. You don't need to watch anything in the middle. You just have to watch the, the opening closing scene.
Phil's Film School.
I'm joking, but it's
Well,
true though. It's true. Like the
it's a
opening closing shots are extraordinarily important, right?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
It's also like I think it was John Hurt, right? Like I don't think he was
Yeah.
a bad actor in
No, I thought it
this,
was pretty good.
but nowhere near as captivating as the guy in the first one. And also like his character is such a baby that like in it like the woman's child is sick and he's like, you left me home alone or you left me all alone in a
Yeah,
hotel by myself. Is that even legal? It's like, and then later he asks about her kid, like without really hiding it from it. Like she knows he's worried about if he's going to be alone in the hotel
yeah.
again that night. And it's just like, he's, if anyone is the protagonist of this, it's him, right? So it's
Mhm.
like, this is the type of story where you do want to be caring about the protagonist for sure. Not that you have to like every protagonist, obviously, but in this type of setup, you
Yeah.
want to put yourself in his shoes and be scared for him and like
Hmm.
and feel bad for him and his wife and the whole situation. But like he's kind of hard to care about because he's so like, like, oh, and who will take the bags? And like, like
Yeah.
he's kind of annoying. Um, and the whole astronomy correction thing. It's like, yeah, we all get it, dude. Like, I don't know. He wasn't an endearing, doddering
Hmm.
old academic like the guy was in the first one. He was just kind of more annoying from the start for me.
Yeah.
And
Same.
also he doddered less believably, I felt like. Like the guy in the first one I just bought from like that he was like half office rocker from the beginning and like I really was buying into it. this guy, when he like had those little moments where he tried to talk to himself, or it was just kind of like, all right, not terrible, but I wasn't really like in it.
Mm, yeah.
Wait, what? Do you remember what happens to that ring? Does he just leave it
Remember.
in the hotel room, or was he wearing it or something? No.
I don't think it comes back
Yeah.
again. It's like
I
it's
don't
not
think
a
it does.
whistle. It's
Yeah.
not important.
Yeah.
Even like the way that he finds the inscription is kind of boring. Like the other guy has a cool like Boy
Yeah, he has
Scout
a
technique where he like
yes.
Right.
shaves the paper. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, and I want to see that, and that's cool. This guy just like kind of blows on it and rubs his finger and then reads something. It's just like so easy,
Yeah.
um, and there's like nothing special about it. Um,
It's so unfortunate because like the remake is what's on like Amazon and like, the remake is probably what I think
Hmm.
most people who see that collection, the Ghost Stories collection, they're
Yeah.
probably going to see the remake of it. And I think people in general say, "Oh, it's an updated version, right?" Initially I thought that too. I was like, "Oh, yeah, the remake should be." I just watched the original. Oh, I'm really excited for the remake because but like,
well, what's interesting though, and I think this is kind of a trend, is that the remake tries for more of a narrative, right? Because a lot of
Mhm.
people, if they do have a problem with the 1968 version, it's going to be sort of the lack of narrative. It's going to be the general, it's like it's atmosphere and like kind of open ended, and like there's not that much that happens. So I could see in 2010 you're going to tackle this and you're going to be like, all right, well, we're going to make there more of a story to this because that's what people want.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it kind of goes towards what we've said about some of the other films we've done, which is
mm,
just like the more you explain and the more you try to narrativize this stuff, the less scary it gets and the
yeah.
less interesting it gets. So it's like you always have to try to find like how much do I want to give the audience? And I feel like they give too much for it to be scary, but not enough for it to be like, wow, that was mind-blowingly cool.
You talked about Socrates before and like knowing nothing and I think the great horror films, I think great films in general, like come from a place of knowing nothing, right? Like you come from a place of ignorance. Um, and I don't think that Remake did that. Like I think I think they tried to kind of, like you said, kind of shoehorn all of their thoughts about dementia and how horrible it is, and
Yeah.
they tried too much there. Like they were coming from a place of, I think, wisdom, or they wanted to impart some sort of wisdom on the audience, as opposed to it is a big rule break that like you said, there's no like the narrative is the 1968 version is they are breaking rules there, and I think that's intentional. And the again the mystery of what this ghost actually is, and it's left so open, and that's the really terrifying part because your imagination against kind of runs away with like I don't I'm with the professor because he's so endearing and
Yeah.
he's such a likable person. I'm totally with him. So like
Right.
when he feels that fear, like I feel the same way, because I really do connect with him. Um, so yeah, it was pretty brilliant again for like a film that's 50 years old, and just the use of the just basic, very basic, like filmmaking techniques, with again their special effects literally a blanket, right? It's
Yeah.
like that's pretty incredible. That's a pretty big achievement, and something that you don't see today. You don't see stuff like that a lot. um just that build, right? Like just again this it's kind of just quotidian, sort of mundane sort of stuff that's happening, and then when you actually see it, it's just so explosive.
Do you think something like that is purely on the strength of your main person's acting? Like in the case of the original, is it just Michael Hordern was
Yeah, I think he was fantastic. I
perfectly
think it
shot?
wouldn't have worked without him, right? Would you agree, Tom?
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
I agree 100%.
yeah.
Yeah,
I wouldn't.
because for it to work, you need all that time, right? Time is powerful. Time does that. And if he wasn't so captivating doing the quotidian, the mundane, you'd be too bored to care, right? It's a long time. It's like a half hour into the film
Yeah,
before like
you're
anything
right.
substantial. And it's
Yeah,
only like 40 something minutes. Like,
Yeah.
but he's so interesting in doing the quotidian that you're actually watching the whole time he's on screen. Whereas like in the second one, there wasn't anything particularly interesting about what the guy was doing. So even though I think it might be a little bit longer, it feels significantly
Yeah,
longer to me.
yeah. It's only
Um,
6 minutes longer, I think.
yeah, it felt significantly longer to me. It was
Yeah.
like the type of thing which I try not to do, where like you hit the remote to check how much time is
Oh,
left.
yeah, that's not a good
I
sign.
do that all the time
Oh
though.
no.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
try not to do that. I try to be like, all right, there's no remote. It's just it's not. There's no stopping this train. It started it. We're
Yeah.
gonna watch it. But like,
I mean, if you do that, it's already a sign that like it's not going very well, right? You're
well,
checking
it's
how much
like
time's left. It's like,
if you tried, I didn't watch it that long ago, and if I try to go back and remember like what actually happened in that, it'd be hard for me to give you like a blow by blow of like the facts that actually happened. And then again, I definitely wouldn't be able to tell you what it all means or what the theme is or like what questions they're asking. Whereas like again, my interpretation of the first one is a pretty clear. Like the question they're asking is like, what happens when an academic in that specific case, but anyone really confronts something that goes against their beliefs. Like that's like an interesting question. Like what is the literal climax of someone believes X, but they're confronted with Y, and those two things cannot both be true. Like that's interesting to me. The more recent, the 2010 one is like, what's the question there? I guess is the question about like um our personalities exist separate from our bodies potentially, so that like that the experience of being locked into your body can happen. And like I don't really know, like, but then
I, I
that's so
think
much
I
about
think
the wife, then that's not about him at all, really.
I think the writer and the director were having this exact were just saying it just like you were probably saying it. Is this what we're going for? That's what they're probably
Because
talking
is it
about.
the first one
Very
or the second
quickly.
one? Is it the first one or the second one where they ask the question that's asked is like a ghost, and it's like the human personality exists beyond beyond death or something like that?
Yeah, it's in the first one.
Is that the first one when they say
Yeah,
so?
That
So
part
it's
was,
like,
yeah, that part was kind of carried over. They used that part in both
yeah.
films. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like to me that was a pretty direct. Like, okay, I could see they're kind of do something right because there is something about like someone who's locked. It's almost like the Awakenings movie, right? When people could be locked in, but they're still inside there. And then it ends with her pretty blatantly like attacking him, saying, "I'm still here. I'm still here." Right. So it's like, okay, so we're trying to get that, even though this person is physically alive and unable to communicate, she's her mind is still there. But like, why are you pissed at your husband? Like he didn't do it to you. Like I don't get, there's a disconnect. Like if it was again, it would be a simpler narrative, but a more compelling one where it's like, did he poison her? Did he do this to her in some way? And therefore she gets revenge on him because this is the reason. Like, I don't think that would have been a great story either, but it would have made sense to me and it wouldn't have been confusing. But
Yeah.
that's not what we get for 2010. Like that's not what we get. So like, what is the point? I don't know.
I think it would have been just even more haunting if it was just a straight up love story.
But why
Like I
would she
think
kill him at the end of a
no,
love
no, that's what I'm
story?
saying. Like there's no death, there's no killing. It's just a love story about like maybe like this woman losing her memories and just the husband kind of coping with that somehow. And I don't know. I think that just would have been a more interesting ghost story because there are ghost stories like that. There are ghost stories that don't involve like people crawling into your bed and saying, "I'm still here. I'm still here." Like it's just,
Yeah.
I don't know.
And there are like, so many stories about like these great love stories of people
Yeah,
who've been together for 60 years and then one passes away and the next passes away right away because like almost like they literally can't
Yeah.
live
yeah,
without each other or they're heartbroken. Like I kind of believe in that and I think that's kind of romantic in a beautiful
yeah.
way, even though it's obviously terribly sad.
It's
But like
also completely different stuff. Like it's a
it's a
completely
totally
different
different
like
story.
yeah,
But
it's
again,
not
if
a
you went that way, it would have been a choice.
yeah.
So I don't understand. I was really hoping that both of you would be like, "Oh, this is what it's about," and I just missed it. But it
Yeah.
seems like all of it, like none of us kind of understand or have
Um,
none of us have a feeling of like watching it and feeling satisfied with one of our own interpretations of it.
Right. Except that they both died.
Right. They both died, but it seems like he died as a result of her scaring him to death.
Yes, it does seem like that.
And
Like, what gave her the ability to do that now? You know what I mean? Like,
um,
what imparted this sudden, but
But
other than
also like what he finds is a wedding ring. So like I feel like there's enough pieces in there where I'm supposed to understand what is happening here, right? Like
Mhm.
he goes away
It's
to
like
this.
an escape room where it's like, okay, you got
Yeah.
these elements, now write a movie.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It's
That's why I'm wondering like if the writer like sat down with me, he would be able to explain it in a way where I would be like, whoa. But like first of all, I don't think that's true in this case. But second of all, even if it was true, it's still kind of a failure as a because you shouldn't need the writer to sit there with you to explain something after you've watched it. Um, but like there are elements in there, right? He goes back to a place where they were once together. He finds a wedding ring. He she disappears as soon as he passes away. So she kind of almost like does this like thing where she, you know, displaces herself from where she is into where he is, like bangs on his door, goes underneath it, tries to really get him to know that she's still there, and then he dies.
Mhm.
I think you guys are exactly right though. Like I think like I don't know, maybe they somehow got the rights to this remake, and then they were trying to like they had another story. I feel, and and I think Susie's right. Maybe they 30% more poignant. They just like stuff that story into this story. Oh, because it's kind of that might work, right? Who knows? It just might work, and they
Or
just and I think that's what they did. I don't think it's any more complicated than
maybe
that.
it was supposed to be a love story, right? And the
Yeah.
mandate was like, well, this is ghost stories for Christmas type thing, and they had to like change because like it really, if you think about it, if his wife communicates to him somehow in a dream state that she's still inside, like he should be thrilled about that. He should be like running next day to the hospital and
Yeah,
trying to
exactly,
like wake
Yeah.
her up, right?
exactly.
Instead, he's so frightened by her
Why?
that he dies.
So weird. Yeah. Like yeah,
I
if you
mean,
frame it in that way, it's
she's pissed about something.
Yeah.
She's not happy, you know?
Yeah, she's
I'm still
definitely
here and I'm not happy.
right. Like I said, like the only thing narratively that makes sense, and there's zero evidence of this, they go out of their way to make sure there's no evidence of this, would be if he put her in that state
Oh,
and she
like
was
he's
like,
responsible
and
somehow.
right, if he was responsible for some way for her being like locked in like that, and she was like, hey, I'm still here, I know what you did, and then she gets her revenge, a classic revenge story, and he dies, and then she's able to kind of move on. Again, I don't think that's a great story, but it's a story that I understand.
yeah. So bottom line, watch the OG. Watch that.
For sure, that'd be my
Um,
vote. Yeah,
Susie mentioned that, it was definitely a large part of the actor is so talented, Michael Hordern. But it's also in the writing, right? And it's also in the vision and the direction, right? Like it was written that way. The script was written that way. It was written by Jonathan Miller.
Yeah, it was written
But
and directed by him, right?
yeah, yeah. So
I think I like clocked that first word, sort of discernible piece of dialogue, just so late into it.
mhm,
So great.
yeah,
Don't need much.
yeah. Um,
I also just think like the care the director put into like every single shot, every single scene is not like there's no like, okay, he walks from here to there across the room. Let's set up the camera. Let's get that shot. There's so much care put into, okay, what's the interesting way that this can be done? And
mm,
again, who knows if that was the actor's choice or director, a combination, but like, there's not, he does nothing but mundane things for most of the movie,
mm,
but he finds a way to do every single one in an interesting and compelling way visually, and it's just kind of like it's a reminder, right? Like don't just quote unquote just shoot anything. Always be asking
mm,
like what's the most interesting way to do this. And
Yeah,
sometimes it's a different angle, sometimes it's camera stuff, but sometimes it's just let the actor do their thing.
yeah.
Ask the actor how would you want to do this, like like or maybe he was just the right perfect person for this and all his mannerisms, but there's something really like special about everything that he does.
yeah,
That's also you have to give credit to the director, I think, because that's the director letting him do like if the director feels that that's the appropriate choice, then that's what they ultimately chose. So it's really,
It
yeah,
it would
that's
actually be an interesting experiment to do like a shot for shot version of this with the boring way to show you how quickly you're bored and for how long. Because there's probably like, if I had to guess, I would say there's like 25 minutes in this film that's just motion on screen, right? Like
Yeah.
no dialogue, just a guy doing things and doing things that in and of themselves are not interesting.
Yeah.
And
That's a
it
really good
totally
point.
like a guy sees his room and unpacks his suitcase and lines up his books. And all this is stuff that I remember off the top of my head because the way that he did it is so interesting. Whereas like there is nothing plot wise important or like those are not important things. And I still remember them. And that's like magic. Like I still again don't know why I remember those things, but it was just like so captivating that it's almost like every time I see a movie now where that's not captivating, I'm gonna be like, oh, why the hell are we watching this?
Right,
You know,
exactly.
it could have been super boring. Like it could
Mm,
have been real boring.
that's interesting. Yeah, yeah. Maybe I wasn't giving the actor enough credit. You know, maybe because I really, yeah, that's a really good point. I wasn't really thinking about it that way. Um, but you're right. You're totally right. He's pretty captivating in whatever he does. Yeah, wasn't really thinking about that. Um,
I mean, the way he uses his walking stick to like slash things and like
yeah, you're right. You're
his
right. You're
physical
totally right.
presence is
Yeah.
so like memorable to me. And I
Mm,
don't think I've ever seen that actor in anything else either. So it was just like for me, he was this guy, and I was just like, oh wow, this guy has never done one thing in a boring way in his entire life.
yeah.
He like goes like this and goes wash, like at the basin. Oh my God.
Yeah. And like every time he's about to eat a sandwich, you're like, damn, I want a sandwich. Like, why didn't I enjoy a sandwich as much as this guy did the last time I ate a sandwich? Like,
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know. It's kind of amazing.
He really got it right. Like the actor, I'm sure yeah, that was
Yeah.
probably, I mean, maybe, perhaps it was a collaboration with the director, but it was probably the actor really understanding like, and it's bold. It's a bold. They're bold choices because that can play if that plays
Yeah.
the wrong way, it could be totally like
It's a big risk,
yeah,
because the
It-
the headiness and sort of inherent lack of drama within sort of the academic
yeah.
life, to portray that on screen and to make that sort of part of your cinematic landscape is, yeah, it's a risk
yeah.
because you're going to show him doing exactly what we see in this.
But just the choices that he make too. Like for me, like if I was like it's almost like the whole the stereotype of an actor is that they get a script and they literally highlight they go through and highlight their lines and that's what they're focusing on immediately. And for me it was like the lesson any actor should take from this is okay, read the description that a writer took the time to write, and every one of those lines is an opportunity for you to figure out an interesting way to do
Mm,
that. And like he has some memorable lines too, but really it's his physicality that you remember. And that's real work that an actor and a director like that was decided on. None of that
mm,
is accidental. I don't think this is who, this guy. I don't think if I saw him in another film, he'd be doing everything exactly the same way, put it that way.
mm,
And so it's like really take the time to realize that every single thing that happens, there's a way for that to be interesting. And I feel like they just like maximize that in this
yeah,
film in a way that like I'd be hard pressed to find similar examples
yeah.
in other films, honestly.
Yeah, really great point. I would have loved to be like a fly on the wall when the director and Hordern were like working together. Like that would have been pretty amazing to see. I'm so curious to see what their process was like, you know.
I think um, I'm not sure where Michael Hordern was in his career at that stage exactly, but Jonathan Miller was pretty new, I think, as a director. Um,
Mm,
there is something online about like his uh, making of it, and I
mm,
haven't seen it yet, but I'm keen to because it's like he did a great job.
yeah. Again, and just having the wherewithal to be that open-minded to say, oh yeah, that looks fun. You should keep doing that. Like
Yeah,
that is a big part of being a director. It's your control, like you're the conductor, right? You set the tone and everything in that frame you're responsible for, to be honest with you. Like, letting the actor again explore or not letting him explore, right? It's really your call as a director. Of course it is a collaboration, but at the end of the day, like, you're the one in charge. um and just yeah, being a new director is even more impressive. Like, just to be open-minded and to work with the actor in that way, that's incredible. Yeah.
That was another thing I wanted to mention too, just briefly, like the microcosm of like the first one, it's like you get the feeling that he's on the shore and it's so cold all the time. And I thought that added so much to like the
Mhm.
feel of it. And then in the 2010 version, it just seems to kind of be like summer and he's just like walking around the shore. And it just didn't feel like nearly as cozy to me. And
That's beautifully observed. Yeah.
I was just like,
It seemed like there
it's
were a lot of
just,
lighting effects too, like a coldness to yeah, they added some stuff
I
there.
don't know, it just didn't feel interesting to me. It just
Mm,
didn't feel like there was that extra, whereas like even just the fact that he's cold on like, that it's on the shore and it's windy and it's cold and like
Yeah.
he's actually cherishing when he takes a moment to stop and eat his sandwich. Like it's like, okay, this is the part in the day when you're having a long walk and you decide, oh, now it's lunchtime. And that's like one of the things you do, because really there aren't that many things that you do. And he's gonna, read a book or write, like each of those things, it's like he's appreciating them in a way that like it was just really enjoyable. And in the second one, it's like, okay, I'm going to film a guy walking on the beach until what's the time to show him running away from someone on the
yeah.
beach. That's the reason it's there. It wasn't like,
Mhm.
okay, what's the most interesting way for us to show this guy rambling? Um, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I sort of knew it, sort of to see it, but it wasn't until you put it in those words that I was like, yeah, why? I mean, John Hurt didn't have a whole lot to do, is the thing, and
Mm,
that's
Yeah,
unfortunate.
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
and
And I don't blame him at
yeah,
all.
that comes down from the director,
Yeah.
right?
And the
Like,
script even to a
yeah, the
certain
script
level, yeah.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, really, like, a lot of really big lessons, like, for filmmakers in comparing these two films in terms of what to do and what not to do. Yeah, some big lessons, really, really big lessons. But like, I do feel like, that I was talking to Susie about this before, but like, I do feel like the 2010 version, like, if it went to box, like, if we had to compare it, if they both went to box office, like, I feel like for some reason, I just feel like the 2010 one would have been much more popular. And I don't know, it kind of does like resemble a lot of the current horror films, like, that don't make any sense. It just,
It's got that feel, yeah,
yeah, it does have that
psychological
feel. It totally
thriller
has
or
that feel.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because
Uh,
the original film is so much more of a superior film.
I'll put it this way. I think the 2010 version would do better with mainstream audiences. I think the 1968 version does better with horror audiences, right? Because horror audiences are the ones who will watch like The Innocents, which is like this black and white 60s film. Like they'll watch the 1963 Haunting either, right? They'll watch, first of all, black and white thing. Mainstream audiences won't even watch black and white, which is ridiculous. But like they'll watch
Mhm.
things that take their time to breathe, that let you use your imagination, that um are more interested in like foreboding than jump scares. And
Mhm.
like those are all things that are more masterfully done, whereas like jump scares, anybody can tick that box. But there are a reason that horror movies are a lot of jump scares now, right? Because I think mainstream audiences, that is what they want. And if you haven't seen hundreds of horror films, that's kind of enough as well, right? But if you have, then you anticipate the jump scares and then those not come enough, and you start to appreciate more like the ones that give you the time to sort of like freak yourself out in a way. Because ultimately, that's right. There's only one fear, is what I always say. There's only one fear in the whole world, and that's fear of the unknown. As soon as you know something, you can't really be scared of it. You can hate it. You can't really fear it anymore. And so in like the first one, there's enough time for us to be afraid because we don't really know what's looming. And in the second one, it's just so much more mundane than that, right? It goes pretty quickly to like a rat scratching on the floor and something banging on the door and things that are just things we've seen lots and lots of times. Um,
Yeah.
And also just, again, the craft wise, way too long, right? Like, I want to go back now and watch the 2010 version for the first time the door is being banged on. And it's like a lot. Like, it felt like the better part of a minute to me. I'm sure it's not, because that would be way too long. But like,
It was long.
there's no escalation, right? It doesn't necessarily
No.
bang any harder, any faster, any different. There's no, it's just the same thing for a long time. Like, almost to the point where if that was happening in real life, you would either do something or you'd be not scared of it anymore. Because you'd be like, well, I guess that's not leading to anything.
Yeah, this is like the 2 a.m. banging on the door.
Yeah.
It happens.
That's my wife again. She's,
It's just emanating,
oh, well, yeah. I mean, this was fun. Again, a really great study. I feel like I learned a lot just watching those two films. And yeah, closing thoughts, guys. Anything you want to say?
Just thanks
Um,
to
It was a
Susie
lot of
for
fun. Yeah, thank you,
introducing.
Susie,
Yeah, because I
for
hadn't seen these. I probably would not have seen these. So thank you for
yeah.
recommending. Really
yeah,
fun.
it was I'm glad you enjoyed them. That I'm definitely the 1968 one is very close to my heart. I find it just damn interesting. You know what I mean? It's like it's sort of like the mastery in the almost like right before you get skilled as a filmmaker. And it's exciting to be at that, like to have witnessed that part of his career. I feel like he probably got pretty polished later on, Jonathan Miller. I don't know offhand his work, but I like this, Yeah.
Yeah, if you have you ever seen the 1961 film The Innocents?
Yeah, Deborah Carr.
Yeah, yeah. So, do you like that as well? Because I was just say like it felt very much that vibe to me, and I like love both of them. So I'd be curious if you like that as well.
Yeah, loved it. I haven't seen it in quite some time. Mood pieces, and things like that. And they don't tend to mess you about with is the ghost not, is it in fact children? Is it in fact, they kind of answer a question for you sort of at least by the midpoint and then your brain can relax and just sort of settle into it. There's like a joy to the stories of this type. And this is kind of why I think the fairy tale is kind of an everlasting enjoyment. We'll always like have space in our brains for stuff like that because they make big character movements. Every fairy tale, it's just weird character decision on weird character decision, and we accept them all. We don't need further justification. And there's something great about that. And I don't know, it's like it taps into my enjoyment of these types of films where you're barely given enough. And that's it.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed that discussion. If you found it interesting, informative, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing. It'll really help us out. We have some really cool discussions lined up for you, so I hope you're looking forward to them, and I'll see you next time.